Imagine, you're deep inside a forest. It's 30,000 years ago. You've been hunting since sunrise. Your legs are tired, your stomach is full. And then, nature calls. You walk behind a bush. You finish. You reach back, and there's nothing there. No toilet paper, no wet wipes, no bathroom, not even a proper toilet. Just trees, rocks, and dirt. Cool. So, what do you actually do now? Because here's the wild part. For almost all of human history, this exact awkward, no tissue in sight moment happened to every single person who ever lived. Kings, farmers, warriors, your ancestors, thousands of generations of them, all stuck in the same bush-related situation. And the answer to what they did next is way stranger than you think. Now, you might think, does this even matter? It's just poop. Just wipe and move on, right? But archaeologists and medical historians say otherwise. Because how ancient humans cleaned themselves wasn't just about comfort. It was about survival. Bad hygiene meant parasites, infections, disease that could spread through an entire tribe in days. In fact, researchers studying ancient latrines have found preserved parasite eggs thousands of years old, proof that this small daily act shaped how long people lived. So this wasn't a joke. This was one of the earliest health decisions humans ever had to figure out. And the first tool they ever used was already lying on the ground. Here's where it gets interesting. Long before paper, long before soap, humans already had access to nature's original cleaning tool: water. In ancient India, the Middle East, and across South Asia, water has been used for cleaning after using the toilet for thousands of years. And it never really stopped. Even today, over half the world's population still uses water instead of paper. But here's the twist nobody tells you. Modern doctors and gastroenterologists actually consider water the more hygienic method, because unlike paper, it doesn't just smear things around. It actually removes bacteria. So the ancient method? Turns out it might have been the smarter one all along. But water wasn't always nearby. So what did humans do when there was no river, no lake, nothing? Picture this. You're living 25,000 years ago. There's no river nearby, no stream, no pond. The only thing around you is a giant leaf. So you use it. Broad, soft leaves were one of the most common tools ancient humans relied on, found in nearly every forested region on Earth, from Africa to South America to Southeast Asia. But here's the strange part. Not every leaf worked. Early humans had to learn, through trial, error, and probably a lot of pain, which leaves were soft enough, and which ones were covered in tiny, irritating hairs or sap that made things far worse. Anthropologists believe this kind of knowledge was passed down for generations. Not written, not taught in schools, just survival wisdom, handed from parent to child. A leaf wasn't just a leaf. It was one of humanity's first pieces of technology. Now travel further north. Colder regions. Fewer big leaves. So what do you use instead? Moss. In colder climates, parts of northern Europe and among early Arctic groups, soft moss became the go-to material. It was soft, absorbent, and, unlike leaves, it didn't dry out and turn brittle in the cold. Some researchers studying Norse history even believe the Vikings used moss regularly, not just for hygiene, but because it had a natural, mild antiseptic quality that helped prevent skin irritation. Grass bundles were used too, twisted together into soft clumps, almost like an early, rough version of a washcloth. But here's the twist. None of these were reusable. Once used, they were gone, thrown away, buried. So what happened when humans started living in one place, permanently? They needed something sturdier. Here's where it gets weird. In ancient Greece, people didn't just use leaves or moss. They used stones. Smooth, rounded pieces of pottery or rock, called pessoi, were used to scrape and clean. But here's the part almost nobody talks about. Archaeologists have found some of these stones with names scratched into them. Names of enemies. Historians believe this wasn't just hygiene. It was also a small act of humiliation, almost like an ancient insult. Using someone's name for this was considered a form of disrespect. So imagine that. Your bathroom routine doubling as a diss track. But stones were rough, painful even. Humans needed something better, and one civilization was about to take hygiene to a level nobody expected. Here's the twist that surprises almost everyone. The Romans, famous for aqueducts, baths, and advanced sanitation, had one of the strangest bathroom tools in history. It was called a tersorium, a stick with a sponge tied to the end. It sat in a bucket of vinegar or salty water right there in the public latrines. And here's the part that shocks people every time. It was shared! One sponge, multiple stalls, multiple strangers, same stick. Public Roman toilets weren't private little rooms either. They were long stone benches with holes cut in a row, and people sat right next to each other, chatting while using the tersorium passed from person to person. Medical historians believe this communal sponge may have actually spread disease rather than prevented it, the exact opposite of what people assume about advanced Roman sanitation. So the empire that built some of the most impressive plumbing systems in history also handed strangers a used sponge on a stick. History is rarely as clean as we imagine. Now here's where the story takes its biggest turn, because the invention you're probably thinking about right now, toilet paper, its origin traces back to ancient China, around the 6th century. But here's the twist nobody expects. It wasn't for everyone. Paper was expensive, difficult to produce, a luxury. So for centuries, toilet paper existed only for emperors and the wealthiest elite, while ordinary people continued using water, leaves, or cloth. Historical records even describe massive paper deliveries specifically made for the imperial court, millions of sheets produced just for the emperor's household. So the very invention that feels so basic and obvious to us today was once a symbol of luxury and status. Most of humanity wouldn't get access to anything like it for another 1,000 years. So how did toilet paper go from royal luxury to something in every bathroom on Earth? The answer involves a very unglamorous history. For centuries after China, most of the world still used whatever was available. Corn cobs in early colonial America, wool scraps among some European communities, even old newspapers and catalog pages once printing became common. It wasn't until the 1800s that toilet paper as we recognize it today started being manufactured commercially in the West, sold in individual sheets, then later in rolls. But here's the strange part. Early versions were rough, sometimes with splinters still in the paper, because it was made from the same rough pulp as other everyday paper. It took decades of small improvements before it became the soft, ready-made roll sitting in your bathroom right now. So that ordinary roll, it's actually one of the newest inventions in this entire story. Younger than the wheel, younger than writing, younger than most of the tools we've already talked about. Now here's the part modern science adds to all of this. Researchers studying hygiene and gut health have found that many ancient methods, especially water, may have had real advantages that dry paper doesn't offer. Doctors point out that paper alone often just spreads residue rather than fully removing it, while water actually cleans the skin. This is part of why bidets, devices based on water cleaning, popular for centuries in parts of Europe and Asia, have seen a massive rise in Western countries in recent years. So in a strange way, the primitive method our ancestors used out of necessity is now being adopted by modern bathrooms as an upgrade. History didn't just move forward, sometimes it circled back. So here's the truth. Toilet paper wasn't humanity's first solution. It was actually one of the newest. For almost 99% of human history, our ancestors relied entirely on nature. Leaves, water, moss, stone, and later on human ingenuity, sponges, cloth, and paper. Every single person who ever lived, the pharaohs, the philosophers, the warriors, the farmers, faced this exact same private moment you face today. And every civilization solved it a little differently. Not because one was primitive and one was advanced, but because humans have always adapted to whatever their environment gave them. So next time you reach for that roll of toilet paper, remember, you're using something newer than you think to solve something older than civilization itself.